Okay, once again, welcome everyone. This session is being recorded so that we can share this session with everyone who was not able to attend, but also with all of you in case you would like to revisit some segments of today's session. In your screen, you should be able to see the second bullet point. It's a link to a resource document, and I posted the link on the chat. If you click on it or copy and paste the URL, you will be able to access that resource document with all resources about Zoom. In putting together these sessions, we realized that there were plenty of things that we wanted to share with faculty, so we decided to put them all in a single document. If you have opened that already, I will put it on my screen in a moment. That document has a lot of different links that you are welcome to revisit during the session, after the session, and the document is public, so you can share that with even other colleagues if you want. During today's session, for the first part, attendees will be muted, but my colleague Derek from the CTL is monitoring the chat right where I posted the link to the Google document. And I encourage you to post questions via the chat. And my colleague Derek will be monitoring that so that we make sure that we answer any questions that you will have as we move along. Um, we have 1 hour ahead of us, and this is session level 2 of the training that the center is providing, it's offering. We have sessions happening until today. I'm sure there will be more coordination for additional sessions in the future. And this particular session is going to cover the personal meeting ID and what that is, how to use Zoom for office hours if you as a faculty member are choosing to do that. It's also going to provide an overview of two important features in Zoom, the breakout room and the overview of a polling feature. So we will take a close look at those so that you can learn what they are and how you can use them in your own classes. We will end with some tips and recommendations as well, so that you can learn more about the tool. I mentioned a moment ago that this is level 2. We were offering level 1 sessions, which is what you see on the screen. An hour ago was the last one, but I'm sure that once the CTL coordinates additional sessions, we will communicate them via email as I have done in the past. Okay. Um, so what we will do specifically today, this is a demo session of those specific features that I mentioned a moment ago, the personal meeting ID, the polling feature, the breakout room. I encourage you to follow along if that is what you want. You can open your browser and I will demonstrate how all of these functionalities work. However, you can also pay attention to how the system works and then revisit specific segments of the video in the recording that will be provided. Again, the resource document is going to be critical because you will also find additional resources posted there. And actually, since we have run this session since last week, there have been many faculty who have suggested or recommended different videos and resources they have found. So I have added those into the document as well. So if you are coming back to this session, having taken a previous Zoom training and you looked at that document, I encourage you to look at it again because we updated the document on a regular basis. I'm going to show what that document looks like in just a moment. And again, the recording of the session will be provided by the end of the day or sometime tomorrow so that you can share that with others. It will be publicly available on YouTube and you can rewatch specific parts of the video if you need to. So again, if you're just joining us to this session, welcome. I encourage you to look for the chat box. In the chat box in this session, I have posted the link to the resource document. I encourage you to look at it, and I also encourage you to use the chat feature so that you can post any questions or comments. And my colleague Derek, who is also part of this session, will be monitoring the chat so that we can make sure we answer all of your questions. There have been recurring questions that faculty have been asking over and over, so we wanted to offer some quick points up front. First of all, your CUNY, if you are a user who is affiliated with CUNY, whether as a student or as a faculty or as a staff member, you are able to access your CUNY LaGuardia account, Zoom account. The URL is what you see on the screen. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a moment once I get into the browser. The URL is cuny.zoom.us, and you log in with your CUNY credentials. The CUNY credentials are your first name, the last name, followed by the 2 digits, which are the last 2 digits of your CUNY MPOL ID. So a lot of times people may get confused and think that it's the Outlook credentials. It's not, it's your CUNY login credentials. If you have problems locating those instructions, those login credentials, there's a resource that I will show you in a moment. The CUNY the Zoom website has a lot of resources and quick how-to videos that I will also show you in a bit so that you can take advantage of those. If you're looking for a specific feature to learn how to use, there's plenty of resources that they offer on their website. Um, Also, a lot of faculty have been asking about cloud storage when it comes to recording. For instance, right now in this session, I am recording it so that I can provide the recording to all of you later. A lot of faculty have asked what the capacity is. IT has confirmed that the capacity is limited and that each user should limit their usage to 1 GB. This is cloud storage, and it's important to know that cloud storage, which is different than local storage. So local recording, as you can see in the next bullet point, is recommended over cloud storage. And a quick workaround that we have been offering faculty is to share videos via Dropbox. And Dropbox is, by the way, also provided by CUNY. You have 1 TB of storage, which is plenty if you want to share documents, spreadsheets, PDF files, videos, audio. And it's recommended that you set up your account so that you are able to share your documents via Dropbox. You can generate a link and you can share that with your students, whether via email, whether via Blackboard. So again, local recording, it's recommended. I will show you once I get into the client what that looks like. And it's a better way to address the storage capacity issue in case you have concerns about the cloud storage, okay? At the bottom, you will also see the Zoom help email address, zoomhelp@lagcc.cuny.edu. I get a lot of questions from faculty about different features on Zoom, and I'm happy to answer to all of them. But whenever there's a technical issue, something with your account or something that needs to be addressed from an IT standpoint, it's best that you reach out to them and they will get back to you. This is an email address that the IT division monitors, and they will get back to you with any question with the solution, with the resource. Derek, are there any questions so far as we move along?
Just to make sure. Yeah, let me see.
Could you raise your volume a little bit? I can hear you very low, Derek. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello?
I can hear you, but very low.
What about now?
Oh, I think I hear you a little better. Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's like really low for some reason. But yeah, yeah, so let's see. Sue is having issues like viewing your PowerPoint for some reason.
Sure. In the resource document, you will also have the link to this PowerPoint in case you want to revisit specific segments. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen right now with my slide, Derek?
Yeah, that's the thing. I could see it, but she can't.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's perhaps something that we can travel share on the side, but I'll make sure that I share the link so that the resource is still available.
You think she should like just like rejoin the call?
Yeah, you can try that too. If that works, you can absolutely log out and then click on the link again, and hopefully you'll be able to resolve the issue. Absolutely, you can do that.
I
Okay, again, this is being recorded so that we make sure that we provide this resource to everyone. The first item in the agenda that we're going to talk about is setting up the personal meeting ID and what that is. You may by now be familiar with how Zoom works. You schedule a meeting, you generate a meeting invite that you then share with your attendees, a colleague or students. Um, the personal meeting room is a space that works in the same with the same functionality. It has the same features, but the personal meeting room is accessible via a unique a meeting ID that it's only applicable to you. You can either you have your own unique meeting ID for yourself that you can access at any time, but you also have your own personal link that you can customize. And in a moment, I'm going to jump to the browser and I'm going to show you what that looks like. And you are welcome to follow along if you want. Um, the personal meeting ID, it's always recommended, your personal meeting room, it's always recommended to use it when you meet with people that you regularly meet with, but also if you want to initiate an impromptu meeting that you don't necessarily have to have scheduled in advance. So if you are a staff member and you want to check in with a colleague, you can always start a meeting on Zoom and then give your colleague the meeting ID and he or she will be able to join you instantly. You can also use that with students when you are meeting, for instance, for office hours. If you give your students your personal meeting ID so that they can meet you on a one-on-one basis, you are able to do that. And that way you don't necessarily have to generate and schedule a meeting as you would normally do with a class. Again, is there any difference between how personal meeting rooms and the regular meeting space work on Zoom? There really is none other than the meeting ID, which will be a series of numbers, and we're going to take a look at them and how you can customize them if you want. We're going to take a look at three things together, and I'm going to jump in a moment to the browser. We're going to take a look at what the personal meeting ID looks like and how you can customize it. We're going to take a look at your personal link, and that will be if the other person clicks on it, he or she will be able to access your personal room. And we're also going to take a look at the settings in the personal meeting room, including the waiting room, because it is convenient when you give this person almost the access to your personal meeting room, but you want to make sure that you know who's coming to your room. So you want to enable the waiting room. I'll make sure that I show you what that looks like as well. So let me now go ahead and shift to my browser. And I believe, Derek, you should now be able to see my browser with the Google document in front, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So right before I get into the Zoom website, I wanted to show you, this is the resource document, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this on the chat once again. Um, and let me and I just posted this link on the chat. Again, this is a public document. You are able to access this and even share it if you want. In here, I want to call your attention to a couple of things. First of all, right here, this is the level 2 training that we are currently running. And right here, this is the link to the slides that I was mentioning a moment ago. So if you want to access the slides are completely public. You can click on them on this link and you will be able to access that. Also, last night, I uploaded the previous recordings of this training. So let's say that you didn't get a chance to attend either level 1 or any other level 2 sessions. You can click on them and these links will take you to YouTube with all of the recordings. All of the sessions, level 1 and level 2, have covered the same material. Okay, this is what we cover in level 1, and this is what we cover in level 2. So you can click on any of the links and you will find all of that material, okay? Today is the last day that we're running this level 2 and level 1 as well, but I'm sure once the center coordinates additional dates and times, we will communicate those via emails, okay? If you scroll down, You're going to find lots of different resources. You don't have to look at this right this minute and click on every link, but it's a good resource for you to keep after the session. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight here under tutorials on how-to resources. There's plenty of different features. So for instance, here's a very good video that I found on, it gives you a walkthrough of the breakout room. That's an additional resource in addition to what we're gonna cover today. In case you're interested in using the whiteboard, there's a very helpful walkthrough video listed right here in case that's something that you're looking for. How to rename participants is also another feature that I can cover today, but there's plenty of resources out there as well. So that is the resource that you should now have in your screens. Again, you're free to share that. So I mentioned in the slides that the address to log into Zoom, the CUNY Zoom account, it's going to be cuny.zoom.us. And you simply, if again, you're welcome to follow along. If you go to your browser and you go to that address, you will see this page right here. And then out of the three options, you're going to choose sign in, the last one. Once you sign in, you're going to see this page right here. And this is where you're going to input your CUNY first credentials, your CUNY login credentials, I should say. They will be comprised of your first name, the last name, and the last two digits of your AMPO ID. And then the CUNY first password. If you have problems identifying your login credentials, you don't remember, there's a login here. There's a login at the bottom right here where you can either manage your account, forgot the user, or forgot the password, and you are able to troubleshoot that as well. So you simply input your information there, and then you go ahead and click on login, and then it will take you to your login page. We're looking at the website. We're going to look at the client a little later. I'm going to explain what that is, and I'm going to cover that towards further down in our session. I wanted to mention that some users have been asking that even after following the steps that I followed a moment ago, they still land on their personal accounts, whether they had a previous personal account, whether it was free or it was basic or pro. And they have even asked if that account merges in any way with the CUNY license account. The answer is no. If you had a previous account, whether it was free, whether it was paid, it does not merge with your CUNY account. They become completely different. They are different. So in case you do have any problems though, and when you follow the steps that I followed a moment ago, and you land in your personal account, you click right here on your icon on the top right. You should be able to see that you're a CUNY licensed user, but if you do see your personal email address here instead, I recommend signing out and clearing your cookies in the browser. Whether you're using Chrome or Firefox or Microsoft Edge or any other type of browser, sometimes browsers store a username and passwords, and that, so just clear the cookies in the browser, and that may solve the issue. Okay. So moving along, I mentioned that we were going to go over first the personal meeting room, and the first thing we're going to look at is the personal meeting ID. So I just logged in into the browser with my CUNY credentials, and on the left, I'm going to see the profile. And in the profile, I'm basically going to see my general information. And here is where I'm going to see the meeting ID, my personal meeting ID, and my link as well. If you see right here on this space underneath my picture, and by the way, users have been asking, how do I update my picture? It's basically right here. If you do not have a picture, you're going to have a default image picture. You simply click on it, and then you are able to upload your own picture. That means every time that you are in a call, and right now I have my video on, but if I turn it off, instead of my name only, you're also going to see my image. Sometimes faculty ask, how do I change my image? That's exactly how you do it. I just turn my camera on, And if you go to the website in this area, you will be able to upload your own picture. I was covering the personal meeting ID, which is this one right here. And I also see my personal link. I will be able to edit that if I go ahead and click on edit. The personal meeting ID, it's a string of 7 numbers. It's a 7-digit number. It's almost like a cell phone, like a phone number. So in my case, what I did, every user will get a default number. In my case, I have switched it to be my office phone number so that I don't have to remember yet another phone number. So you can do that, and you can simply edit right here, go to your account, and then click on edit, and then you will be able to input the new number. Sometimes users have reported that they are trying to switch that personal meeting IDs to a number that they want, but it's already taken. Obviously, if that's the case, you might want to try a different number. Again, why are we using this? What is the purpose of the personal meeting room? With the personal meeting room, you are able to initiate a meeting at any time, even if it's a meeting that you have not scheduled. You initiate a meeting at any time, and then you can invite any other colleague or a student by giving them that meeting ID, and you can have those impromptu or unscheduled meetings, if you will, at any time that you want. You can enable and start that, initiate that meeting from your client, and I'm going to share that a little later in the session. Okay. You will probably be familiar, you probably are familiar with every time that you schedule a meeting, you generate a random meeting ID number, and then sometimes people are asking each other, where's the meeting ID? Where's the meeting ID? Which one is it? And even passcodes. So with this, you don't have to worry about the meeting ID being different. For your personal meeting room space, the meeting ID will always be unique and it will not change. So you can customize that. Um, if you do not want to share your personal meeting ID, the other option that you have is the personal link. And as you can see right here, there's a personal link, and you can hit customize on the right. If you leave this as default, I believe you're going to have a string of letters and numbers. But in this case, I switched it to my first name and last name so that I'm able to know the full email, the full URL, and I simply hit save changes, and then that went through. How do I use this? Well, if I provide this URL to someone else, I copy and I send this to someone else, that someone else will be able to click on it and will be able to join me in the meeting at a time that we both agree on, okay? Again, all of this without having necessarily to schedule a meeting and setting up the time and setting up the recurrent meetings and sending the invite via email to other people. So either with your personal meeting ID or with your personal link, you are able to initiate and have impromptu meetings with anybody that you would like. So that is how you edit that. But let's take a look at the settings, because the other thing that I mentioned was the waiting room. And probably you may be wondering, what is the waiting room? I'm going to now go ahead into the meetings, and you probably may be familiar with this interface. These are all the meetings that I have created. You see this icon right here in red because that is this meeting. It's currently in progress. But the option that I am looking for is right here, personal room. We just looked at the meeting ID and the personal link. Now let's take a look at the settings. How is that meeting set up by default? So I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to go into edit because I want to show you how to alter, how to tweak this settings. So I'm going to go into edit right here. And again, the personal meeting room, the personal meeting ID is not going to change. It's always going to be the same. You can customize it if you want to a number that you can remember best, but if not, you simply memorize the number that already is assigned to you, and then you will be able to move along from there. In my case right here, I have chosen the waiting room, okay? And the waiting room really is self-explanatory. That means when you initiate the meeting, you start the meeting, And then if somebody is trying, you give someone your personal meeting ID or your link, and that someone is trying to access the meeting, but that someone is not going to come straight into the meeting. That person will get a pop-up window that says, welcome to Pablo's personal meeting space. He will let you in shortly. It's almost like knocking on the door. I'm going to show you in a moment what that looks like on my slides. And essentially, you will be prompted with a notification that says such person is trying to come in into your personal meeting space. Do you want to admit them? Let me actually do that and shift over right here. So if you go into, you initiate the meeting and someone is trying to knock on the door basically, and they are in the waiting room, you're going to see something like what you see here. You get a notification and then it tells you who is the person who's trying to get in, and you will get the options either to admit or to remove. Meaning if I know that person and I know that I am meeting with that person, obviously I will let them in, I will admit. But if I do not know that person or I just suddenly get that random notification, you can always remove that person. You also have the option to message that person, meaning you can obviously let them know. Let's say, and this has happened a couple of times, sometimes when I have office hours using my personal meeting ID with students, I agree on a day and a time with them, but then when they come in, they are joining from a different device that does not have their account. For some reason, I'm waiting for Mary, but suddenly Peter comes in and I don't know who Peter is. I'm expecting Mary. But then she tells me, actually, Peter is my brother, and I didn't know how to rename myself. So in some cases, you can, if that's the case, then you can message the person and say, can you rejoin and make sure that you have your appropriate number, if your appropriate name, so that I can recognize who you are. I believe, and I can check back again on this, but I believe this message is a one-way message, meaning you as a host can message the person in the waiting room, but the person in the waiting room cannot respond to you. So for instance, if I ask the person, is this you, Mary? And she will not be able to respond saying, yes, it's me, and I have to change my name. She will not be able to respond. So it's a one-way communication. What I've done in some cases is I've told the person, I don't recognize you. In case you have an appointment with me, please rejoin and make sure that you rename yourself so that I can allow them in. This adds a layer of security in the event that you're joining, you're meeting with someone and someone else has joined. Obviously, they will not get straight into the meeting. They will get into they will see the waiting room first. Let me go back and share my screen again. So Derek, you should be able to see my browser with my Zoom account, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that was what this option looks like, the waiting room. And then this options right here, video. What this means is that when I initiate the meeting, my video will be turned off by default. Um, but it's important to know that even when I'm choosing this option as default, it does not remove my ability to turn it on manually if I want to. It simply means that when I enter the meeting, I will enter the meeting like this with my picture as the default. You probably, if you're seeing my video thumbnail right now, you probably will see that you only see my picture. That is what it means, but I can turn it on as I am doing it right now at any time, okay? And the participant is the same. You can set the option, the default option for the participant to join this meeting with their video turned off. And then if they choose to share and turn on their video camera, they will still be able to do that, okay? I recommend these settings, especially since, at least in terms of my participants, they may or may not want to share their video, turn them on. This really applies to, it depends on how you have that with your students, that agreement. I normally have these options as off. And again, even when they're off, once we are in the meeting, we can manually turn our cameras on. All right. In terms of the audio, I always recommend having this in both. And the reason for that is because we don't know which devices the students are going to be joining in, or the other person, whoever the person is. if it's a colleague, if it's a student. If you choose telephone, that means that the other individual will have to use a telephone device only to be able to access this. If you choose a computer, the same. The individual will absolutely need a computer, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, to access the meeting. But if you choose both, the individual can have either or, and he or she will be able to join the meeting. Okay, I always recommend that for the purpose of being inclusive of all the devices that students and faculty alike may have. The options at the bottom, if you click on enable join before host, obviously if you have the waiting room enabled, then this is automatically disabled, because what this means is that if you initiate the meeting and you have enabled this, someone may have already been able to join that session, and you don't want that, right? So you always want to be in control of your meeting and have that layer of security so that you can allow the people that you want them into your meeting. Uh, so you never want to enable this for the personal meeting room. In some cases, you may be able to. So for instance, this option was available for this session, but I was the first one who joined. So essentially, this is like leaving your door open of your classroom. And if the students coming way early, they can come in and hang out in the classroom until everyone comes in. But if you have the door locked and students coming early, they're gonna have to wait outside for you to come in, open the door, and let everybody in. That's sort of like a parallel of how you can think of this. I always recommend to not check this, okay? The mute participants upon entry, I do recommend this on regular meetings, because what this means is that the default setting, similar to the video, it will be to mute participants once they enter the meeting space. This is particularly helpful, especially for users who are not familiar with the Zoom interface. Sometimes users may be on environments that are very noisy if they are joining from the street, or they may simply be in a background environment that has a lot of noise, and they may not know how to mute themselves. So you can always check this off and mute them automatically. It's important to know that even when you choose this option, it does not remove their ability to unmute themselves. Okay, so they can unmute themselves if they want to, if they have a question, or if they want to interject and speak. Okay. And then the rest of these options are quite similar to the meeting. Actually, if you take a look at these options and you yourself have scheduled a meeting in Zoom before, you will realize that the settings are almost identical, okay? And that it's true. The settings do not change. You also have the same types of settings for a regular meeting and for your personal meeting room space. The only difference is that in your personal meeting ID, there's always going to be one single unique ID that's personal to you, and that will never change. Okay, that's the same meeting ID that you will have, and you can use that. Normally, it's recommended to use it with users that you regularly meet with, or in this case, for office hours. Okay. Um, I want to stop here and ask if there are any questions at this point.
There's no questions in the chat.
Okay, okay. So let me, are you able to see my client, Derek?
Right now, I think we only see like the browser. Not
Okay,
sure about the client.
okay. So let me just share my entire screen, my entire desktop. Are you able to
Yeah,
see
now we
my
see it.
Zoom environment
Yeah, we can see it now.
and the client? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to show you this for the purposes of this training. This is the client that I mentioned a moment ago. And once you open the client, it's recommended that you download it to your device, whether it's an iPad or a desktop or a laptop. If you're able to download the application, it's highly recommended that you do. The cool thing about it is that once you download it, it will ask you to log in, and then you don't necessarily have to log in every time you open the client. It's almost like your email, right? You configure your email at the very beginning, and every time you open your email, you don't have to log in all the time. So in this case, it's the same for the client. If you go right here, in this case, I am working on a Mac, but it's the same if you're working on a Windows computer. If you go to your profile on the top right, you will be able to check for updates. This is always something important that we recommend to users who download the client to check on a regular basis. If you click on it, Zoom will tell you automatically if you have any updates pending. In this case, I am up to date. I have everything. I have the latest version that Zoom has released. I wanted
Oh,
to show you,
Pablo, real
yeah,
quick, how do you download the client? And if you do, does it stay on the desktop?
when you're able to see the resource document, right?
Yeah, we see it now.
Okay, so let me just go into right here under resources, and if you go to tutorials and how to, number 11, there's a link right here for first-time users to the download center. And then this will be the client that you would have to download. It will recognize automatically if you are on a Mac or on a Windows. When you download it, there should be a default setting to create a shortcut to the desktop. All you have to do is just make sure that that remains checked. And then essentially once it downloads, you will be able to access the shortcut from the desktop. If you do not see that shortcut, you can always go, if you're in the Windows, you're here on the Windows icon, and you can type in Zoom, and then you will be able to find the software, the client. If you're working on a Mac, you go into your Finder window and go into Applications. It's normally alphabetized, and you go all the way down to Z, and then look for Zoom, and then launch the application. So are you able to see my client again, Derek?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this case, the reason why I wanted to show you the client was because when you enter the client, more than likely you're going to see the three tabs in the top. That's home, the meetings that you've scheduled, and then the contacts. Obviously, the first one by default will always be the home. This orange screen, orange icon is the one to start a meeting. Right now it says back to meeting because I am in the meeting. So, but once I am no longer in the meeting, if I open the client, this will be the start meeting button. And that is how you remember how a moment ago I said you initiate a meeting at any given time without necessarily having to schedule this via the website or via the client. You can go to your client and initiate a meeting, and then invite your colleagues or the students by giving them your personal meeting ID or your link. Okay, so again, it will be the orange button. Right now it says back to meeting because I am in a meeting right now in this session. But once I am not in the meeting, this will say start a meeting. And that is how you initiate the meeting. And you can use this for office hours and give your students, if you are meeting with them on a one-on-one basis, you can also you can give them your link or your meeting ID, and they will be able to join you. All of that without necessarily having to schedule a meeting as you normally do. Okay, let me go ahead and stop this share right now. Are there any questions, Derek?
Not yet so far.
Okay, so now we're going to dive into the two features that I mentioned in the agenda. That is the breakout room and the polling feature. And the breakout room is very helpful when you are doing small group activities. Obviously, it is a feature that it's available in the CUNY license, and faculty can certainly take advantage of it. We're going to take a look at that. How do we enable breakout rooms in the settings page, and then I'm also going to show you my Zoom environment so that you get an understanding of how you can navigate that during your call. And then I'm also going to show you the polling feature and how you could potentially use that in your classes. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. And are you able to see my full desktop, Derek?
Yeah, like right now we see like your client.
Are you able to see my full Zoom environment with the video thumbnails?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. So in this case, I'm showing you this for the purposes of my of the training, so that I can show you what the breakout room feature looks like. And as you can see, my host controls at the bottom of my screen. I will be able to find the breakout room feature right here. A lot of faculty normally get confused when they do not see that. And in order to check that, the first thing that I have to do is, in case you schedule a meeting and you do not see it, I am on my Zoom account on the browser. Remember, we logged in at the beginning, and I'm going to navigate to the settings. And then in the settings, there's plenty of items here, but I'm just going to look for the breakout room feature, which is under in meeting advanced. A lot of the times, I believe this feature is off by default. So you would have to make sure that you go to your account and make sure that under settings, you're looking for this, and then this is on. Okay, this means that the breakout room feature is on. In this case, if you see this icon right here, you will notice this is off. So you have to make sure that the breakout room feature is on. And the same with the polling. I believe the polling, it's a little further down. Uh, it's a little further down. Let me just go ahead and do a quick Control F, Command F, and I'm just going to type in polling right here. So the same with the polling feature. You have to make sure it's right here. It's listed under in meeting basic. And then you will have to make sure that the feature is on. Again, sometimes faculty, they schedule the meeting, they plan everything, and then when they go and start their meeting that they've scheduled and they have the students, they suddenly realize that they don't see the breakout room feature or the polling feature. If that is the case, make sure that you go to your settings in the same way that I just did a moment ago, and make sure that those two features are on, okay? So I'm going to return to my video thumbnail on my in-meeting controls. I think that's where you should be able to see that right now, right, Derek?
Yep.
So in here, I'm going to see the breakout room feature, and I'm showing you all of this interface so that you can see what it looks like from the host perspective. So I'm simply going to go ahead and click on breakout room assignments, breakout room feature. In here now, Zoom is going to provide me with three different examples, three different options. The first one is going to be assigned automatically. If you have a group of 25 students, and you just want Zoom to generate four groups and then put people accordingly in each group, then you can tell Zoom assign people automatically. Notice that right here I have the number of breakout rooms that I want. So in this case, I can put 3 or 4, and notice that if I modify this number, Zoom is going to tell me how many participants I'm going to have per room.
Oh,
So
Paulo,
yeah.
real quick, can you show again where the breakout feature is on like the client?
It's not in the client. The breakout room feature is found in your meeting space, and you will find it if you are the host, so that you can enable that. In my case, that's why I'm sharing my screen, so that I can show you what that looks like from the host control. If you're looking for that button on your end, you probably will not find it because you are a participant in my meeting. When you schedule your own meeting and you send your invite to your students or whoever you do send it to, and you start the meeting that you schedule, you will be able to find the breakout room feature there. Right now, you will not be able to find it because you're a participant. That's why I'm showing you my interface to show you what it looks like as a host. So if I go into my meeting controls at the bottom, I'll be able to click on breakout room features. And these are the three options that I was going over. I can assign my participants automatically. I can assign them manually, meaning if I want specific people in each specific group. And then here is the latest update that Zoom has released. It's to let participants choose a room. And perhaps this will serve your needs, but now you are able to set up the breakout rooms and then give your students or your participants the choice to join any breakout room that they want. Maybe they will go to breakout room number one, and if they do not want to be on breakout room number one, they can move to another breakout room. That is the latest feature that Zoom released. But in order to fully enjoy that, every user in the call needs to have the latest version, which is the version 5.3. And you update your client in the way that I showed earlier today. When you go into your picture, check for updates, and you download the latest one. I'm going to show you two examples today, and those are going to be the first one. The settings are the same, but I want to demonstrate how they're going to look like as you as the host. In my case, I'm going to choose 4 rooms. I can just choose as many as I want, but I'm just going to go ahead and choose 4. And actually, you have up to 49 breakout rooms that you can create in your CUNY license. 49 breakout rooms, and you have up to 300 participants that you are able to bring into your meeting space. Okay, 300 participants in one single meeting, up to 49 breakout rooms that you can create. I'm just going to go with 4. I'm going to assign people automatically, meaning I'm going to tell Zoom, put my participants already randomly. There will be 2 and 3 participants per group. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on create. All of this is happening on the background. In other words, I have not opened the breakout rooms yet. Nothing has been opened. As a host, I am configuring this during the class. You can join a little earlier to the class so that you can set up the breakout rooms and then assign students accordingly. That really varies in how you use this feature. So in my case, I asked Zoom to assign people automatically. And because I chose 3 rooms, here are the 3 rooms that I have. I can go ahead and just pull up this list of names so that I can have a better view of my rooms. And let me start with group number 1. First of all, you can go ahead and rename this if you want. Let's say that you want this to be not room number 1, but group A. You get the idea. Straightforward. You can do the same with the rest of the groups. You can also delete the room, and if you delete the room, you will be able. The 3 participants in this case will be moved to other rooms as well. And when you
Um,
assign people, you will
yeah.
be you will be able to see 2 options: move to or exchange. Derek? Is there a
Yes, we have
question?
2 questions kind of related to this. First is, can you create the breakout groups before the class? And
Yes. Mhm.
okay, or like I mean during the class. Sorry.
You can do it both ways. And what I am demonstrating right now is how you look at the settings during the class, because you will be able to allow to tweak all of the settings during the class. And then later I will show you how can you create the breakout rooms in advance when you are scheduling the meeting via the website. I will show that as well.
Okay, and a second question is, do the participants need to be like in the call for you to like assign them into specific rooms?
Oh, that's a great question. The answer is yes. So the participant has to be in the call so that you can move them around, unless you are pre-assigning them during the scheduling process, and I will show that when I show how to enable the rooms in advance. Yeah. So I am assigning my participants automatically. I will see 2 buttons right here. Let's say that I want to move Derek not from group A to any of the other rooms. So I will go ahead and do that if I want to do that. So now he is in the other room. And if I use the exchange, what that's going to do is Zoom is going to tell me, okay, in this case, I want to exchange Zoo but with who? Zoom is going to ask me, who do you want to swap this participant with? Let's say that I want to swap in my colleague Sylvia, and then Sylvia will be moved to group A, and now Zoo will be in the other room number three, group number three. So you can use those two features, arrange your participants. Again, they have to be here if you want to be able to move them around. Obviously, all of the names that you see here are the names in this call. If you do not see someone, it's probably obviously because they're not here, right? Um, and that is how I can move my students around if I am assigning them automatically. Okay. Now let's take a look at the settings, because the settings are important, and that is what is going to help you run and utilize this feature effectively. If I look at the gear button right on the bottom right here, I'm going to go ahead and see a number of different settings. The first one is allow participants to choose room. Basically, this goes back to that feature that I mentioned that Zoom recently released. You are able to create breakout rooms and give your participants the ability to join any room that they want. Obviously, by doing this, this is no longer applicable, so we're just going to skip that. The second option, allow participants to return to the main room at any time. What that means is that right now we are on the main room. It's all of us all together. If I open the breakout room, and then the three rooms will be opened up and populated with the participants that I want, this will suddenly become the main room, okay? And if you want to send students to the breakout room, this is asking you if you want to allow them to come back to the main room at any time that they want. If that is the case, then you can check this off. That means that they will say, actually, I don't want to be here, so let me return to the main room and ask my professor to send me to another room. Obviously, if you do not check this, that means that the student will have to remain in the breakout room until you say so, until you close the breakout room. Basically, they will be stuck there, okay? The third option, automatically move all assigned participants into breakout rooms. I recommend using this because what this means is that the moment that you open the breakout room, if you have the names under each of those rooms, the participant assigned to that group will be automatically saved. They will be automatically sent to that room. If you do not check this option, what's going to happen is the participant is going to have a pop-up window on their screen that says, the host is inviting you to group number A, to group A. Click here to join and click here to cancel, something like that. And if the user does not take action, does not do anything, then the user will not join the room. So I highly recommend enabling this option so that the user is taken automatically as long as he or she is assigned. And it works especially well when users are not familiar with the system. So I recommend enabling this all the time. The next one is the auto close the breakout room after a certain time. It's important to know this. You have to open the breakout rooms manually. You have to click on the option open breakout rooms in order for you to start working on the breakout rooms. But you can close the breakout rooms automatically. Okay, that's important to know. And you can do so after however long you want them to be. If you want to have a breakout room only for 5 minutes, that means Zoom is going to time that breakout room, and that way you don't have to keep the time. You don't have to worry about it. After the time that you've assigned, then Zoom will automatically move students back to the main room. If you don't want that, if you want to be flexible with your students and say, you know what, let's just spend about 15-20 minutes, you simply disable this, and then you close it manually at any time that you want. The countdown after closing the breakout room, what it means is that when you hit the button close breakout room, uh, you will essentially give your students a timer so that they are able to come back. So they are in the breakout room and you close it, they're going to see a pop-up window that says the host is inviting you back to the main room. They can either join the main room right away if they desperately want to get out of the breakout room, or they will see the countdown of however long you have chosen, all the way from 10 seconds to 120 seconds. And they will say, if you chose 10 seconds, they're going to see 10, 9, 8. And when the time is up, they will be automatically sent back to the main room. It works however you set it up. You can always tell your students, we're going to be in the breakout room for 20 minutes. And once I close it, you're going to have 1 minute. they're going to see the countdown on their screens so that they are signaled that they need to come back to the main room. So if you want to enable that, you might wanna check that and set the specific length of time that you want to give them a countdown for. If you do not check this option, what's going to happen is the moment that you hit close breakout rooms, they suddenly are going to be brought back to the main room. And if they were in the middle of saying something, or they were talking to someone, or they were sharing their screen, or they were doing anything, they will be cut off and they will be sent back to the main room automatically. So if that's what you want, you can go ahead and do it. I normally set a countdown to be 1 minute, 60 seconds, and I tell my students, time yourselves. We're going to be in the breakout room for 20 minutes. When I close, you're going to have 1 minute to come back, and they're going to see the countdown on their
Pablo,
screens. Yeah.
is it possible, like if everyone is okay with this, can you just like put us all into like the groups just to see what students see?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So you can see the rooms right now, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put you in the groups um, for um, for a couple of minutes, and then I'm gonna bring you all back. Okay, I'm just going to, for the purposes of this activity, I'm gonna allow the participants to return to the main session at any time if you want to. But I'm going to keep you there for a couple of minutes. I'm going to automatically move all of you so you don't have to click on anything. And then once I close this, I'm going to give you only 10 seconds. And let's see. Okay, actually, I'm going to set this up to 3 minutes. So I'm going to set the breakout rooms for 3 minutes, and after 3 minutes, I'm going to bring you back to the main room, and you're going to have 10 seconds. So pay attention to your screen, and I'm going to set up all of these groups right here. Okay, so I'm actually going to move. No, I'm not going to move anyone. Okay, so if everyone is ready, I'm going to open it up right now, and let's see how that works. Okay, so group number, I think you guys are group number 1 or group A. So this is an example of me as the instructor coming into your room. I can visit you and I can check in with you, provide additional instructions, and then I can, make sure that you're okay. And then I, as the host or as the instructor, I can always come back to the main room and then visit the other groups, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I'll see you shortly.
Amazing. Thank you.
Room number 3. So this is an example of how you're working on a breakout room. You are breakout room number 3, and I, as the instructor, I am visiting you. I can come in and check in with you, provide additional instructions. And I was just with group A. So I visit them for a brief moment, and now I jump to your group and I can check in with you. I can leave to the main room and then visit any other group, as I will do right now as well. Okay, so this is an example of how this works.
How did you jump? How did you jump in?
I go into, and I'm going to demonstrate that once we're all back in the main room, I can simply go and hit join, and then I'll be able to join any group that I want as the instructor, as the host. So I'll see you shortly. Okay, I think everyone is back. Hopefully, you had a pleasant experience. So, I was able to visit two groups, Group A and I believe Group 3, with my colleague Sue over there. So, great, thumbs up. So, that's an example of how you can enable the breakout rooms. I didn't do anything other than just clicking OK when Zoom asked me, do you want to bring everybody back? Because remember that I enable the breakout rooms only for 5 minutes. And also, let me ask you, you can unmute yourself or even on the chat. Did you see the message that I posted? We're coming back in 15 seconds. So that's an example. That's an example of how there's a broadcast message to all when everyone is on the breakout room. You can utilize that space to provide those quick messages. Make sure something, I normally use that with my students, and I tell them, make sure that you designate a note taker, or make sure that you address this question, or we have 2 more minutes, something like that. And then, as you saw the countdown when I brought everybody back. You only had 10 seconds, and then suddenly my screen started populating all of my video thumbnails because everyone was back. Now, while you were in the breakout room, I was the only one in the main room, and I want to show you because I took a screenshot of what that looked like. My breakout room if I clicked on the breakout room, it looked like this. These were all of the groups, and then if I hit on each group, I can simply click on join, and then it asks me, do you want to join this group? And I said yes. So that is how you can join any group at any time. I normally have my breakout room activities to be like 20-25 minutes, so that I can have time to visit each group, depending on how many groups I have, at least for a couple of minutes, and check in with my students. The button that you see at the bottom as well, broadcast message to all. If you click on it, it will give you the ability to type in the message that you want to broadcast to all of the members in every single breakout room in the way that I did. And that will allow you to send those messages as well. And when you hit close all rooms, obviously you close the rooms and everyone comes back
Yeah,
to
Pablo.
the screen.
Yeah, so we had like two questions that came up in our group.
Yeah.
The first one is like, basically when we are all like in the different groups, if like basically students like if they type in the chat, is the chat just gonna be like shared within this group, or is it still shared with everybody?
That's a great question. The chat automatically becomes the main room chat that we all had automatically became inaccessible, and instead it generated a chat only for that group. So for instance, while we're in this main room, I can send a message, let's say to my colleague Dana via the chat, but then once I open up the breakout rooms, Dana is in another group. If I want to send her a message, I will not be able to do that because she's in a group. So I would have to visit that group in order to use the chat feature. So the answer is yes. The chat room, the chat feature automatically generates a chat that it's only for that group. If you, as the host, allow your participants to save the chat, you can give them the option to do that and they can save it for future reference. But that's a feature that any host can either enable or disable. So it's not a universally turned on feature.
Okay, and other questions. Okay, there's more questions now. So once people are broken into groups, are they able to like share each other's screens if needed? Um,
So you should be able to see my entire Zoom environment right now, correct?
yes.
Yep. Okay. So a couple of things here. I, as the host, will have the security button right here. If you're looking for this, you probably are not going to find it because that's only for the host. So I, as a host, will have that. If you are sending your students to a breakout room activity and you want them to share their screen and be able to do that, all you have to do is click on the security, and then where it says allow participants to, simply check off the option share screen. This is in relation to a security breach that, or a security measure that Zoom took back in March or April, where they disabled by default the sharing screen ability only to the host. So every time a meeting is initiated, whether it is a personal meeting room space or a regular meeting, the sharing screen ability, it's only given by default to the host and the co-hosts. So right now, for instance, my colleague Derek, it's a co-host. He will be able to share his screen. But if, let's say, my colleague Norma wants to share her screen, she will not be able to do that. So I would have to go into my security panel and make sure that I hit this button. If I hit this button, then all participants will be able to do that. So back to your question, if you are setting up a breakout room activity where you want students to be able to share their screen, make sure that you go in here and check this option and then send them to the breakout room activity. They will be able to then share their screens with one another.
Okay, and also similar to that, like, can we share a file with the groups in the breakout rooms?
You can share, the people in the breakout room are able to share files amongst themselves, but if I as the host or as the instructor want to share a file with all of you while you're in the breakout room, I will not be able to do that. The only method of communication that I will have is the broadcast message to all, but that's only giving me a text message that I can send. I cannot attach a document. So my recommendation is, if you want your students to work on a specific file, make sure that you share that file prior to enabling the breakout room, because you will be able to do that. And then you make sure that all of your groups have their respective files or the one single file, and then you send them off. They will be able to open that file and then be able to go and do the work that they need to in the breakout room. They have to open the file before they are moved to the breakout room, because remember, they will not be able to access the chat that they had in the main room while in the breakout room. Okay, that's important to mention. So if you want them to work on a file, send it to them and make sure that they have opened the file. Once they open the file, then you can send them to the breakout room.
Okay. Okay,
In
other questions? Some Blackboard Collaborate Ultra breakout groups, there are two chat features. I think like one of them is, you know, like to chat within the group, and then one is for everybody.
Mhm.
Is that like a possible feature in Zoom?
I am not familiar with the chat room feature on Blackboard, but by what you are explaining, it does not seem to be the same in Zoom. So in Zoom, you have the chat feature with the main room, and then once in the breakout room, you will be able to have a chat feature only in the within that group. So you're not able to send a message to each group individually from the main room. The workaround, though, is if you want to really share files and communicate with each of your groups, I would suggest establish your breakout room activity for, let's say, 20-25 minutes, and then you can go into each room depending on how many rooms you have, and then you can give them a specific file or a specific link or something in the chat room once you join the room, in the same way that I did with group A and group 3. So if I wanted to do that, like if it's not one file for everyone, let's say that it's 4 groups and 4 different files, I would make sure that I visit each group at the beginning, I share the file, get out of that room, go to the next one, share file, and so forth. That obviously takes a little bit more work, but it's doable. If you know how the system works and you know how to navigate between breakout rooms, you can absolutely do it effectively.
Okay, and finally, can so basically can like students only see one file in the breakout room?
You can share as many files as you want. If you want to share multiple files in the breakout room, you have the ability, as you can see in my chat window, you have the ability to choose file and then upload file after the other. So you don't have any restrictions as far as I'm concerned. So you can share a file and then share another one. They'll be able to open all of them. What I wanted to mention right here is the 3 dots right here. As you can see, every time that I open the chat, I will see this floating window. And I'm only working on a 13-inch Mac, so I want to make sure that that I take the most advantage of my space. So I can go ahead and click here and then just go into merge to meeting window. And what that's going to do is it's going to merge my chat on a side, especially if you're heavily using the chat feature for asking questions or for having your students interact with one another. It's helpful to have that there. The other thing that I wanted to reiterate is that the file functionality, the ability to share files, it's something that all users can either turn on or off, and hosts most primarily. So if you happen to be in a separate meeting later on any meeting and you go into the chat and you don't see the file, it's probably because the host disabled that. In my case, I purposely enabled that feature because I share files with my students. So don't be surprised in case you do not see that. It's not a universally turn on feature. Before I forget, the one thing that I wanted to mention, and this is not something that, thanks Dana for, you see, that's an example of how you can share a document and then users can, and absolutely, you can test it, absolutely. So that's an example. If you click on it, you will be able to download the file and you will be able to open it, okay? The thing that I wanted to mention is that recording in terms of breakout rooms. I in the other level 2 trainings, I did not get to open the breakout rooms with the participants. You all wanted to do that, and I was happy to do it. But it's something important that you need to know. If you're recording your session will record everything that happens in the main room. So, for instance, the four groups that were happening, the recording is not going to capture that. The recording is going to capture only what happens in the main room. So my recording is going to reflect the lonely time that I had in the main room while you all were in the breakout room. And then once you all came back, it will continue. But it's not going to record the specific breakout room activity. That's something that you should be aware of. Okay. In my case, it will record the groups that I joined because I kept the recording going when I joined as the host. But if you are not joining every group, just don't get confused if your recording does not reflect that. So that's something that I wanted to mention. I want to make sure that I go over the polling feature because that's something else that I wanted to share with you, and I'm looking at the time. Um, Similar to the breakout room feature, the polling feature will be available to the host only if you have enabled that in your settings. Okay, if you're looking for that polling feature right now, you probably are not going to find it because you are a participant. I, as the host, and that's the purpose of me sharing my e-meeting screen settings. I'm just going to close this for the purpose of having more space, and I'm going to go ahead and click on polling. Every time that I click on polling, Zoom is going to ask me, it's going to show me a question if I have created that, in advance, or it will show me the option to add a new question. In this case, I have already prepared a question, which I'm going to go ahead and click on stop sharing, and I'm going to launch. So you should be able to see a question on your screen. If you're able to, go ahead and answer the question. It's a simple question. You can simply choose the answer and I will be able to see it. It's only 7 people in the call and I can see close to 4 people, 5 people have done it. Let me go ahead and share my screen once again so that you can see what I see as a host. You will be able to see my poll is in progress. You can time this if you want to, launch this for like a minute or two. And then you can see the responses right here. Once I no longer want anybody, I don't want anybody else to answer, I'm simply going to go ahead and hit end poll and I will see the results, okay? Now the next thing that I can do is I can share the results with all of you so that you can see it. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop so that you don't get confused. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit share results and you should be able to see, oh, so this is what everybody sort of like answered and this is the majority. Everybody knows that today is Friday and everybody's happy about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. It's a kind of a straightforward process. However, it is limited and I will share why. The reason why it's limited, and let me share my screen, it's because the options that you have are only to ask a question that requires either a single option answer or a multiple choice answer. And I'm going to share why. This is a question that I already had in front of me, but I want to click on edit because if you are initiating a meeting and you have not set a question up in advance, you will not see anything. So you will be prompted to enter a question for the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and click on edit. And the moment that I click on edit, Derek, I think you should be able to see my browser with my add a poll question, correct?
Yes.
All right. So the moment that I click on edit, I'm just going to go ahead for the purposes of this. I'm going to say test polling question 3 because I think I've done 2. I'm going to type a simple question here. Um, And this is why I mentioned that it's slightly limited. I can either have my participants, my viewers, my students to respond with a single choice or with a multiple choice. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and type in 2 options because they're self-explanatory. And also, I can make this polling to be either anonymous or not. So if I choose this, that means that when I pull the report, I'm only going to be able to see the responses that I received. But if I do not check this option, I will be able to see the name of the person and the answer that he or she provided. It's important to know, and that's what I'm saying, that it's a little limited because it is tricky. For instance, if you had a user who is joining your class and for some reason he or she joined from a device that is not theirs and they had a different name, or they simply had the name iPhone and they didn't know how to rename themselves, when you pull the report and you want to see who answered what, Zoom is going to tell you iPhone user iPhone responded this. So you're not going to be able to know who that person was. So that's what it's a little tricky. I don't recommend using this polling feature for a quiz, for instance. It's a great feature if you want to do a quick icebreaker activity or you want to measure your students' understanding on a specific topic. It's helpful for that, but it's really not helpful for a quiz or something more complex. Let me also add this. This is one question that I added. Let's say that I want to add another question. It's going to be the same type of question, meaning a question right here that requires either a single choice or a multiple choice. Let's say that I want to ask my students, how would you describe your week in 1 word? I'm not able to do that because I'm not able to generate an open-ended question. So if you are familiar with other kinds of polling systems, you have plenty of options in terms of adding images or multiple choice questions or word clouds. It's really nice. Unfortunately, this feature does not give you that same range of possibilities. It only allows you to create simple questions that are either anonymous or not, and questions that require either a single choice or a multiple choice. That's it. So I'm just going to delete this for the sake of this activity. And this is the one question that I created. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And this is back on my browser when I scheduled the meeting. And I haven't forgotten that there was a question about how to set up breakout rooms in advance. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So I am on my meeting scheduling information. And at the bottom of every meeting, right, this is everything that I set up in advance. And at the bottom, I will always find the poll tab. And if you schedule, let's say you have a session next Friday and you want to set this up right away, you can schedule your meeting and then you can go ahead and go into the poll area and then click on add a question. When you add a question, you add a poll, you will see exactly the same interface that I showed a moment ago. And what that means is that, and that's actually what I did prior to the session, when you set this up in advance, when you are during your meeting call, you hit the polling feature, the polling button, and Zoom will, if you have created a question in advance, Zoom will show you that. While we're here, and I'm going to ask Derek and see if there's questions, but just in a moment, when you go into the meetings, and let's say that you want to schedule something in advance, I'm going to go ahead and schedule a meeting. I'm sure you are all familiar with this. I'm just going to go very quickly through these options on the top. I'm just going to choose this for, let's say, tomorrow at 4 p.m. for 1 hour. I'm going to skip all of these options. Here's the question that I wanted to tackle: assign breakout rooms in advance. Let's say that this meeting is for the future, tomorrow or next week or whenever. If you check this option right here, breakout room pre-assign, what that's going to do is give you two options. Add the rooms and then even import from the CSV. When you import from the CSV, you are able to pre-populate users to a specific room. It is helpful, but it is a little tricky because you would have to make sure that that user is joining from the account, the email address that you have designated. So for example, if I am pre-assigning my colleague Derek to group number one, and I know his CUNY login credentials and I put it there, but then all of a sudden he does not realize, or he joins the meeting quickly and he joins using his Gmail account, then he will not be assigned to the group that I assigned him to because Zoom did not recognize that email address in Gmail. So it's a little tricky. You would have to make sure that users are joining with the specific account that you are designating, in this case, the CUNY login account. I'm going to click though on create rooms because the creating the rooms is really, really helpful. That means that you can create the rooms in advance and you can hit the plus button right here. Let's say that I want 3 rooms and I don't want my breakout room to be breakout room. I want it to be group 1. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and click here. I'm gonna go ahead and do group number 1. I'm gonna go into group number 2, a breakout group, and then do group number 2. And actually, I don't want breakout room number 3, so I will see the trash can icon right here, and I'm gonna remove it. So I don't have any participants pre-assigned to this, but I still have the breakout rooms enabled and with the title that I want. So I will be able to see this when I joined my meeting at the time that I am designating this. And what this is going to do is that you should be able to see my in-meeting controls. If I join that meeting with those specific number names for those breakout rooms, when I click on breakout rooms, I will be able to see those specific teams that I have, rooms that I have set up. You're not seeing those right now because I didn't. That's a different meeting. It's not this meeting. But once you initiate that meeting, you will be able to see those titles, those rooms in advance once you click on the breakout room. I also want to mention that, and this is something that it's a recurring question. A lot of faculty ask if I create breakout rooms and I set up, let's say, Zoom to automatically populate my rooms. If I open them up and then I close them at the beginning of my session, and you want to reopen the same rooms with the same people, you can do that. Zoom will recognize the same members in each rooms. Okay, so you don't have to automatically generate it again. Zoom will automatically recognize the previous groups that you have created. And unless you hit on recreate, Zoom will keep the same list of teams, of groups, and you will be able to open those rooms at any time again during the class. Okay? So, any questions at this point?
Yes. Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I ask? Okay. When students are in their breakout rooms, they're sharing a screen, can they still see the video thumbnails along with the screen?
That is correct. Yes, they can. The functionality in the breakout room is the same functionality as you see in the main room. They will be able to share their screen if you allow them to by going into the security button and allow participants to share their screen. They will be able to see the share screen and the video thumbnail. If they turn it on, obviously, they will be able to see that. Yes. Yeah. Any other questions? Let me then go back to my slides. If there are any questions, please jump in. Yes, Sue, go right ahead.
Okay. Can we do all this setting stuff in the client?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe the answer is no. The settings, if you're talking about the settings in, let me stop this and Are you talking about these settings right here?
Yes.
Yes, no. Those settings are only going to be available in the in-meeting controls. So you're not able to do that ahead of time in the client or ahead of time in the website the way that I showed. You are able to designate the names of the rooms that you want, but you will not be able to choose these options ahead of time. You would have to do that during the call, during the presentation. Unless there's other questions, if so, please let me know. You are free to unmute yourself if you want, but we want to end, if not with final recommendations. Turning off your camera when initiating a meeting is always helpful, especially if you're giving your students the options to turn it on, whether they want it or not. Remember that if you turn it off, you always have the ability to turn it back on, okay? If a student turns their camera on, it's helpful to consider a virtual background. If you take a look at my video, you will notice that I have a nice background from LaGuardia. In the resource document that I shared, there is the link for LaGuardia's Flickr account where they have shared lots of really nice pictures that you can use as virtual background. If you're using your personal meeting room for office hours, make sure it's recommended to use the waiting room so that you don't see everyone just joining into the meeting. It's always helpful to enable the waiting room so that you can see who's almost knocking into the door, and then you can admit them on a need-by-need basis. Consider asking your students to have a physical notebook to take notes. This is from my own experience. I'm sure many of you do already, but it's important, even though distance learning is happening it's happening mostly digitally. I always recommend my students have a physical notebook so that you can take notes and you can write down questions. It's always good to have that. And then finally, update your desktop client, as I mentioned earlier. Not only for accessing the latest features that Zoom may have released, but also to add any security layer that they may have released as well. It's always helpful to do that. Okay. Any final questions?
I don't mean to be a hog, but if
Not at
someone else
all.
has a
Not at
question,
all.
go
Not at
ahead.
all. Go ahead.
Okay. This is just in general when I want the students to share their own work and I enable sharing screen for all participants, that should do it, correct?
That is correct.
So I don't have to worry about anything about remote control, handing over remote control. I mean, because that was confusing.
Correct. Correct. The remote control, for the rest of you, if you're not sure, is if I want another participant to share their screen, they can share their screen. I'll be able to view it. But if I want them to click on something or they're not sure how to navigate the website or whatever it is, and I want to take action, meaning click as if I was there, I can request remote control. But that is independent only when I want to do something on their end that I'm not able to guide them through. I've seen some people do this, especially for training. Our SDMs sometimes do that so that they can click on settings and they can guide people through a specific process. But if you want them to share their screen only, you can have them pull up a Word document where they have written an essay, share their screen, and they can scroll down and they will be able to share that work with you. You do not necessarily have to request or give someone else's control unless you want the other user to do something remotely.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Any other questions? Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
No, not actually.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to end this by thanking you for your time. We went over the 1 hour, but I hope this was helpful in multiple ways. Again, this is being recorded. I will share the link sometime later tonight so that you can revisit the full session if you want or segments of it. Remember that in the Google document that I shared, there's plenty of more resources. There's a cool video on how to use the whiteboard. There's a cool video on how to rename, very helpful video on how to rename participants if you want to learn how to do that. There's plenty of resources that I invite you to check that. In case you have additional questions, feel free to send me an email, zoomhelp@lagcc.cuny.edu in case you have any technical issues. Thank you very much. Thanks to Derek for his moderation of the chat. And thank you all again. And I wish you all a happy weekend and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.